Do we do with the injuries to Javonte Williams and Jonathan Taylor in fantasy football? And what other disappointments and surprises are we tracking in fantasy football heading into week 5? It's time for our week 4 reactions right here, right now, as we get another edition, another week of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. We have your follow-up there. The power rankings are up there. We'll have my start sit-em column already for Week 5 up on Tuesday afternoon, so check that out. But first, we got to react to what happened in Week 4, and it was brutal. Another unpredictable week, some wacky big performances, some major injuries, and that is definitely the lead of the week. Javonte Williams and Jonathan Taylor before the Colts and Broncos play on Thursday Night Football. So that's not great here. Those two key running back injuries. So we'll figure out how to sort that out and how to manage our fantasy teams with those issues here. And then we'll look at the other key injuries as well as playing panic or patience with the players that really had a bad week 4 performance or underwhelmed us based on the expectations. And then we'll look at a bunch of players who broke out or had big games there and see if they're for real by playing Are You For Real? So we'll get into all that on today's show. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available to you on all platforms. Today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. All right, let's dive into the injury fallout first here with our Week 4 reactions. And the big one, Javonte Williams. The knee injury there looks pretty bad. We'll get the official word here, but I don't imagine he'll play for a while here. Could be down for the season, so they did fear the worst here. Melvin Gordon was fumbling, so it was a great opportunity for Javonte Williams to take over this backfield. The Raiders actually scored on a Gordon fumble, but Williams goes down. We get Mike Boone, the former Viking. Remember him? He had some value at some point behind Dalvin Cook. He's now in Denver as a number 3, might be elevated to the number 1 with Gordon's ball security issues. The coach and Gordon were very disappointed about that. Now Williams getting hurt, so really tough situation there in Denver. Short week. I mean, for sure you're not going to have Williams this week and for multiple weeks here. So I think Mike Boone right now is the play. The Broncos are still a dedicated run team. And again, somebody who gets key touches, and I think Boone will get those here. They'll work in somebody else, and Gordon will move to a lesser role here, given the security issues. And he has been all that great this season either. So we'll see how it plays out, but it's going to be a Boone-Gordon committee. The Broncos just simply might throw a little bit more. They wanted to do that. They were kind of fading Javonte Williams and his usage in relation to Gordon when he was healthy. So this is going to be interesting to see, but they did give Boone a majority of touches there down the stretch, even in the trailing position against the Raiders there. So all that to keep in mind. So Boone is probably your best bet to return some value here for Williams, but obviously a big drop-off in talent, and Williams is underutilized by Nathaniel Hackett. So adding injury to insult here in his usage that he's not going to be available to the Broncos for a while. Now, Jonathan Taylor rolled up his ankle there against the Titans. He just didn't look good in that game at all. The Titans were really struggling against the run. Third straight disappointing game for Jonathan Taylor after that explosion in week 1 against the Texans defense. It hasn't been the same here the past several weeks there. So not looking all that great here. Last week against the Chiefs couldn't get going. This week the matchup seemed favorable, but Taylor loses a fumble. He gets hurt. So I don't know. Jonathan Taylor has been one of the most durable guys in fantasy football. That's why we took him at number 1. over Christian McCaffrey. Go figure, he has an injury and gets questionable for the game, and he has a much better, healthier game there against the Cardinals. So weird stuff happening in fantasy football. I don't expect Taylor to miss a lot of time, but I would say they were going to give him the week off here. I mean, that's a tough turnaround there to face for Taylor. They may just need to give him a week off to get rested and get better here and to be ready there for the second half of the season. So Colts obviously have not played well this season. The offensive line hasn't been all that great. Matt Ryan and the passing game have been bad. They've been trailing. They were down big to the Titans, much like they got shut out by the Jaguars in week 2. So things haven't worked out well game script wise for Taylor and blocking wise. So we'll see. I don't think it's going to be a Nyheim Hines feature situation by any means. You have Deion Jackson. He's the other active back on the roster, the third stringer, but they also have Philip Lindsay, so he's got good experience there as a runner. Could face his former team, the Broncos, be elevated from the practice squad this week. You also have Javonte Price, who has some juice there. So something to watch for with this Colts backfield. It could get really messy. Hines, we know what his role is going to be. He's probably going to get the red zone looks and the receiving work, but I could see in the power running game elsewhere if someone gets it. And it's not the easiest matchup this week. I know the Broncos were gashed by Josh Jacobs and the Raiders here this week. Again, that I think was a benefit there from not wanting to test that Broncos pass defense. So I think you'll see some of the Colts to stay grounded here, but Hines didn't get a lot of touches in that game. So something to watch there as well. I think this backfield could be unpredictable, and this is why Taylor's a workhorse and Hines is not, and some of these other guys aren't. So it's going to be committee approaches to replace Taylor here. It's not going to be a situation where we have a Jamal Williams or Khalil Herbert still dominant key role that we can play in fantasy football. So it might be tough to gather some value on the short week in this, I think, tricky matchup for these backfields involved here turning around. All right. So those are the two major injuries and what you should do about them here in week number 5. And then we're going to look at some minor injuries as well. There were some other ones to keep track of. Treylon Burks, it's going to be tough. It looked like a bad foot injury here for the rookie. He had to be there in a walking boot. So I would expect Burks misses multiple weeks here with his injury. So again, Robert Woods has come on, but really wasn't a lot here. You have Okonkwo, the rookie tight end, was involved. So this is going to be spread around passing game by committee for the Titans there. That's what we've seen. We've seen Kyle Phillips involved before he got hurt. We saw Woods get involved the last 2 weeks, which scores in a good yardage game. So Woods is the default number 1, but really they're going run heavy, throw to the backs, throw to the tight ends there. So Burks is a big blow. It looked like he was turning the corner, but then a quiet game in week 3 and then this injury in week 4. So a lot of rookie wide receivers are producing big time. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson has been good early. Jahan Dotson has been producing, but Treylon Burks taking the first round in a tough position here to keep producing for the Titans this season, and it might be just waiting until 2023, and maybe Malik Willis will be the quarterback and Burks will be unlocked a little bit more. All right, now let's go to New York. We lost a quarterback there. Daniel Jones had the ankle injury. He had to come back into the game because Tyrod Taylor replaced him, but he got a concussion here. So really up in the air what the Giants will do at quarterback this week. They're traveling to London, so they're going to have to make a decision soon. If Taylor's concussed and can't get on a plane to make that flight, and Jones can't practice this week, they're going to have to find someone else to plug and play in the Brian Dable offense. So really tough here for the Giants. And again, good spot for the Packers defense. First ever matchup of winning record teams in London. So something to watch out for. But this Giants passing game, it just gets worse and worse here for this. It's really Saquon Barkley and nothing else you can look at for Big Blue in fantasy football. We also had Brian Hoyer get hurt. Speaking of the Packers, he got concussed in Green Bay. They replaced him with Bailey Zappi, and Zappi played pretty well, the rookie from Western Kentucky. Very Mac Jones-like, I will say, the way he produced there playing off the run. So Hoyer, we'll see if he gets cleared. They're playing the Lions this week. Hoyer did play at Michigan State here, and it's a revenge game for Matt Patricia. We'll see how it goes, but I would expect it's a lot of Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson continue to ride those guys against that atrocious Lions defense here in week 5. And Zappi, I think there's a good chance he's starting. He looked pretty good there and a little bit more upside than Hoyer gives them as a caretaker here. Now, the Bills lost two players. You had Isaiah McKenzie go down as well as Jameson Crowder. So they're two slot guys essentially. Gabriel Davis wasn't seeing a lot of targets. So I think this could benefit Dawson Knox a little bit more if McKenzie and Crowder can't go here against the Steelers this week. The Steelers have had some trouble covering the tight end. We know that. So I think they'll pivot more to Dawson Knox playing off Stephon Diggs. There, we'll get into Gabriel Davis a little bit more when we play Panic or Patience in our next segment. But yeah, they already were out without Jake Kumaro here. So McKenzie and Crowder go down. So still Stephon Diggs dominated situation there for the Bills, but a tough outing there in the weather against the overachieving Ravens secondary here in week 4. And finally, Kenny Golladay, not a big deal here. He wasn't doing anything in fantasy, but it's more of the fact that another receiver goes down. So Kenny Golladay with a knee injury. You already had Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney miss the game with a knee injury. Sterling Shepard is down for the season with his knee injury. So this is the same thing. Last year, remember, all these guys had hamstring injuries. Now it's been replaced by knee. I don't know what's going on with the Giants wide receivers in health, but not a lot to see there. So this Giants passing game is just going into the tank, and we're just basically waiting patiently for Wan'Dale Robinson to be a factor. They need him badly in this offense, and maybe you'll see a little bit more of Daniel Bellinger, the fellow rookie there at tight end. Would not surprise me either. So those are the major injuries that are related to fantasy football, topped by Williams and Taylor going into week 5. We'll play again, Panic or Patience. These are all the players who are disappointed. We're looking at you, Kyle Pitts, so we'll break that down in our second segment here. I did tell you at the top that this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Prize Picks, and Prize Picks has been a fun game to play for sure, and it's a good way to get in on the action every NFL week here. Prize Picks, it's just fun because tonight we can look at the Rams and 49ers game and look at Matthew Stafford's passing yardage and what Jimmy Garoppolo might do through the air. And then you have Deebo Samuel versus Jalen Ramsey. That's an interesting matchup as well. Jeff Wilson Jr., will he have a good game rushing tonight against that tough Rams defense? So things that you can play there on Prize Picks. Now, their format is so easy to play, and it's a good place where you can get to 10 times your money. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players, and they will go score more or less than their price projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people, just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes the NFL, of course, but NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and much more. Entries at Prize Picks can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. You can also rely on safe and fast withdrawals from Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is currently operational in more than 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And we thank Prize Picks again for sponsoring Locked On Fantasy Football and the Locked On Network. All right, it is time to continue the show here, and we're about to play Panic or Patience this week with the guys who underwhelmed, came up empty here for our fantasy football teams, or near empty, and we will do that in a moment. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday at Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, time to look at Panic or Patience, and we will start with the Pitts, the literal Pitts here with Kyle Pitts. 1 catch there against the Browns. What's going on here? You had Parker Hess. Yes, Parker Hess had more snaps at tight end than Kyle Pitts. What happened? Well, a couple things. The Falcons saw that the Browns' defensive front was depleted without Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Taylor Bryant. You had the running opportunity for Cordell Patterson, not just him, Tyler Algier, and Caleb Huntley, 202 rushing yards. I don't think Marcus Mariota played very well at all. He had an interception. kind of like Jacoby Brissett. It was a bit Spider-Man meme-ish to see both of these kind of bridge mobile quarterbacks kind of play the same after they both played pretty well for the first 3 weeks. They really were run-heavy approaches for both teams. You couldn't blame them, and the Browns had been dominating with Nick Chubb. The Falcons decided to turn the tables and do that with their committee. We're careful with Cordell Patterson, who had missed a couple of practices, being rested with a knee injury. So you saw a lot more of Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier. They were all effective here. When you run the ball that well and you're a bad team and you're trying to get a win, you're not going to put the ball in the air. And you didn't have enough completions here in the passing game. So it wasn't just Kyle Pitts. Drake London dragged down as well by this limited volume. So it was a lot like the Chicago Bears we saw from the first 3 weeks, with Justin Fields not throwing a lot and these running backs kind of dominating there with the touches, no matter what the game script was. And the Falcons were in the game the whole way. So Kyle Pitts needs games where they're negative and they have to throw a ton. You might get that this week, but it's a tough matchup against the Buccaneers coming up and the 49ers. So Kyle Pitts, they're going to have to wait to scheme him open. They did that a little bit better last year with Arthur Smith. Still not seeing looks in the red zone. He's had one decent game there in week 3. So Kyle Pitts, I'd start to panic a little bit, but don't just trade him for nothing here. Get some decent value. He's still a name that can turn it around. They're going to get him the ball at some point this season here. They could make the switch to Desmond Ridder, quarterback, at some point if they keep losing. Unfortunately, they won the game, so they're 2-2, so something to watch. But Kyle Pitts I'll hold, but I would definitely bench right now if I've got any viable alternative that's producing, such as a Tyler Conklin, say you picked him up off the waiver wire, or a David Njoku. You can definitely play those players over Kyle Pitts at this moment until he gets well here in this offense, and you see some evidence of that. Michael Pittman Jr., oh boy, that was brutal. So here's a guy that was killed by the tight ends, and they've been using random tight ends for Indianapolis. Last week, the rookie Jelani Woods had 2 scores. This week, it was Mo Ali Cox. We've seen Kylan Granson be a part. So there's 3 tight ends that are getting the ball here. Alec Pierce kind of woke up in the passing game as well here for the Colts. So what is going on? I thought this chemistry with Matt Ryan was impeccable. Matt Ryan also goes for more than 300 yards against a bad Titan secondary. They can't get Pittman going. This is a concern. Matt Ryan is just not playing well. Would they switch to Nick Foles? And would that wake up Pittman? We'll have to see. I think if Matt Ryan has a terrible game in Denver, they might have to consider that a little bit more, given Foles and the connection to Frank Reich here. So something to look at. The Colts maybe demanding some changes here, but this is the whole thing. Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman. It was supposed to be Calvin Ridley connection part 2. It has not played out that way. So I'm a little bit panicking on Michael Pittman. And a lot of it is tied to Matt Ryan here for sure. Now, if you don't have the running game, teams are going to focus on taking Pittman out. So we'll see what the matchup is, but he could see a lot of Pat Surtain too here, who contained Davante Adams there in week 4. So something to watch out for in week number 4. Or 5, I should say. James Conner was disappointing as well. I mean, they started using Eno Benjamin a little bit more. It was a little bit concerning. And then Kyler Murray started being used in the red zone as a runner again. So Conner not getting the touchdowns, not getting the volume. When that's not happening, he's not a big factor in the receiving game. You're not going to get too much. So Conner is definitely concerning. He's had multiple injuries this season. Came in with a knee issue, played through it. Maybe they were being a little bit cautious with that. But we saw Benjamin. We saw Darrell Williams also getting some work here. So not great developments here for Conner as they go a little bit more committee-like in Arizona. And we'll see if that's a result of the injury or is it the trend that we're going to watch here, that Conner is falling back into a committee situation the way he was with Chase Edmonds last season. Now, James Robinson, I don't know if it's a total panic. And for me, James Robinson is on the same team as Travis Etienne Jr. He may not be for you, but I think there might be a little shift to Etienne. I know the game script was negative there, and they didn't give Robinson the ball enough. They were actually ahead 14-0, but before they knew it, the Eagles had the lead, and they had to bring in Etienne. It's not like any of these guys did too much, but they do get the Houston Texans this week. So this might be an opportunity for Robinson and Etienne to go off here, playing off Trevor Lawrence. So it should be a bounce-back game. So I wouldn't panic on James Robinson. He looked all special here in the first 3 weeks. The Eagles were tough matchup, bad conditions. So all that says, so patience for sure with Robinson, but I think you'll see a little bit more Etienne worked in for the Jaguars. Now, Najee Harris, I'm going to have patience. He should have had a touchdown here, but we had the rookie Kenny Pickett ran for a couple scores. He vultured Najee Harris there. So if it's Trubisky in there, maybe Harris scores both those touchdowns. We're not talking about him in this segment, but Najee actually might get going because Kenny Pickett, one thing he did was able to throw downfield to George Pickens and get that going. I know there was two interceptions, but one was off the hands of Chase Claypool, who's been terrible this season. Pat Freiermuth has let him down as well, but tough matchup, I know, this week against the Bills. I'm not saying that's a great time for Harris to get going against those linebackers and that run defense, but we did see J.K. Dobbins have a pretty good game, catching a touchdown and running in a touchdown. So Harris is touchdown dependent this time, and he's got to get a little bit more checkdowns, and I think that can happen. Trubisky is not a big guy to do that, but as a rookie quarterback in there with Pickett, you could definitely see that. So let's hope Pickett starts against the Bills because I think it's going to be key to getting George Pickens and Najee Harris going, as well as another guy that was disappointing in that same game, Deontay Johnson. Again, that Mitchell Trubisky was having moderate success throwing to Johnson. I think they just need to fade Claypool a little bit more. I know there's a Matt Canada love of Claypool. It's not just because Claypool is from the country of Canada, but it's just too much. Claypool looks the part, but he's not right where I think George Pickens legitimately is the guy. Deontay should be like their number one. So really this offense should flow through Johnson, Pickens, Freiermuth, and Harris, and really they need to stop throwing to Claypool as much as they do in this offense because he hasn't been good. He doesn't separate that well. He's just big and fast, not a complete receiver by any means. So this hasn't been a good fit for this offense. So Johnson, I think, will get going. And Pickett, to me, is an upgrader for Trubisky. That's going to help all these weapons. Now, Darren Waller has been in a funk. You'd say, okay, so Hunter Renfro's out. This is a good matchup, but they just didn't get it going. They went run heavy, and that kind of messed things up. It was pretty much Davante Adams and a lot of running with Josh Jacobs in this game. But Waller, what's happened is no Renfro, and then makes it easier to take Waller out of the game in the middle of the field where you're not worried about Renfro and you don't have to dedicate slot attention to get him out. So 2 weeks without Renfro hasn't been profitable here for Waller. Really disappointing because I thought the matchup was excellent there, but they just couldn't get him the ball in the high, significant situations there. So Waller, I'm going to continue to practice patience here. They are playing the Chiefs, who can be vulnerable against a tight end this week. So maybe Waller gets going against a familiar division foe here in week 5. Gabe Davis. Yeah, I think it's a little bit time to panic here. Again, we played out the fact that Kumaro didn't play, and you had the two guys getting hurt and the negative game script. Gabe Davis just is not getting the opportunities we're looking for. Maybe that ankle injury is worse than they played on here, and he's playing through it. Maybe he needs to miss a game or two here. But the Steelers matchup is not bad, but it's really hard to trust Davis right now opposite Diggs. So we love the player. The talent is there. But I think we need to get in those big-time shootouts. So say when the Chiefs are a game, or we saw in week 1 against the Rams, and you got to put up some big points, that's when you'll see the Bills throw a little bit more to Davis. You need that high volume from Josh Allen. You need Josh Allen running less, and you need them running in general less with Devin Singletary here. So we'll see. But this week, I think it's going to be more balanced attack. The Steelers defense still worse against the run than the pass. So I can't recommend Gabe Davis. I think I wouldn't panic. I'm going to hold patience, but I'm also maybe thinking of alternatives to play as a wide receiver 2, 3, or flex in my lineup. Terry McLaurin only saw 4 targets there for the Commanders. The chemistry with Carson Wentz has been up and down. He did miss on a potential touchdown there. He threw to the end zone, but McLaurin couldn't come down with it. Trayvon Diggs really covered him well in that game. Curtis Samuel, however, didn't do that all that much, and Jahan Dotson would have had a bad game unless he didn't get that 4th down touchdown pass and garbage time from Wentz. So it's just a concerning passing game for the Commanders. The good news is they're playing the Titans in that secondary this week. That could be a sneaky source of points here as Wentz plays at home. So Wentz is going to be typically better at home. So I think McLaurin bounces back. So I'm going to say patience with Terry McLaurin. Also patience with Rashad Bateman, another wide receiver from the Beltway that should be number 1. The secondary was beat up for the Ravens, but it wasn't the greatest game from Lamar Jackson. And Mark Andrews also struggled to get open. So credit the Bills defense here. They do play the Bengals this week, so that's going to help. Bateman did have a nice big game against the Bengals coverage last year. So Bateman is going to rebound. So patience with Rashad Bateman. Panic, however, with Amari Cooper. This is going to tell you if he's got a bad matchup, take Amari Cooper out of the lineup. Now, that happened there. In weeks 2 and 3, there was a good matchup, right? It was the Jets, it was the Steelers. Yeah, what did Amari Cooper do? Go off. But in week 1, not all that great, right? Against the Panthers in that secondary. Week 4, Falcons, AJ Terrell shadowed him. He's out of the game. So look at that matchup specifically for Amari Cooper, and that's how you're going to look at it, really. If you've got a good matchup and the pass defense is bad, put in Cooper. If a team can double team him or shut him down to one guy, Amari Cooper's out of your lineup. So that's what happens. If Cooper gets not involved and the Browns say, okay, we're not going to mess with this tough matchup, he's going to disappear from the game plan. We saw that there. And there was a big reason why the Falcons were able to win the game because they made Jacoby Brissett struggle. His only real target was David Njoku with a little bit of Donovan Peoples-Jones, but they got gashed on the ground, but they were the better running team, and they shut down Cooper, and that's why they were able to upset the Browns there in Atlanta. And finally, Richie James. Look, he's a lower-end guy here, but I think it's just a reason to panic on this whole Giants passing game. Again, we need Wan'Dale Robinson. Don't try to force a Richie James type into your lineup that just doesn't have a lot of talent. He's just a guy. He's been around with the 49ers. Just because you get opportunity doesn't mean you're going to produce. Talent is the number one thing in fantasy football. So I don't think you panic or be patient with Richie James. Just don't go after players like this. And that's the bottom line here in fantasy football. All right. We will get into our guys that had the positive games that we were excited about in week 4. It's always good to end on a positive here and be excited about our teams going into week 5 and flipping the script and looking at potential waiver wire improvements. So we'll do that in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, are you depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys? Of course you are. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Ready? Delicious, indulgent cookie dough covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite. It's cookie dough chunks puffs. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. Run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat where you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them all for yourself. Like all Built Bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. So good. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which is something your body will absorb more efficiently. It provides tons of health benefits for you. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or you just need to grab a quick bite to go. Built is the perfect protein bar. They taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Grab yourself a Built Bar. And we have a special offer for you, the Locked On listener. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15, get 15% off your order. The promo code LOCKEDON15 will get you 15% off your order only at Built.com. All right, it is time to close the show with some positivity here. Let's bring it all in. Things are good. Everything's good in fantasy football. It's early in the season. We're going to get it going here. Josh Jacobs. If you were sticking with Josh Jacobs, you were thrilled with his breakout game. It's about time he got going. So the passing game wasn't working. So when they said, okay, we're going to grind away. Derek Carr's not playing well. We're going to use our offensive line. They're better at run blocking. They're not that great at pass protection. The Broncos have a good pass rush. So credit Josh McDaniels for the good pivot of the game plan, caught them by surprise. By the numbers, the Broncos had been very good against the run, but they had also not faced a team sticking with the run consistently for good production there. So Raiders were relentless with that this week, and Jacobs came through with a big game, couple scores. Of course, Derek Carr did nothing here in that game. So again, Derek Carr, we were already in the panic mode with him, just the way things have gone in this offense, the passing game, but they did the right thing. They went with Jacobs. They also had Derek Carr rushing for 40 yards in this game. So it was all about the running game to flip the script here in the Raiders. Look, you can criticize the Falcons and the way he's the Kyle Pitts. You can criticize the Raiders and not getting Davante Adams the ball a little bit more or Darren Waller. But when they win games in reality, they're not going to change it for us in fantasy. That's the bottom line. So Josh Jacobs, stuck with him. I didn't like the matchup, but he came through. Miles Sanders, this guy is tough to trust every week. The Jaguars were the number one run defense in the NFL. Rainy conditions, Miles Sanders completely gashes them in this one. So Miles Sanders is so crazy. And then you had Kenneth Gainwell there. So Jacobs and Sanders, two of the most frustrating guys to have because they can explode like this, have these multiple touchdown games where they dominate on the ground, but then they can totally disappear from the game plan and not have any TD value or get the ball near the goal line. So Miles Sanders, again, he's boomer bust, much like Josh Jacobs. So that's what we saw in the game. So are we for real with Jacobs and Sanders? Yeah, they're for real because they're getting key touches on their teams. And I think you have to put them in your lineup every week as RB2s just based on the volume alone. Tom Brady, what a big game for him. It was about time. Nearly 400 yards passing. The game script went negative against the Chiefs, a big time negative. So Brady pretty much said, we're abandoning the run. We're throwing. He ends up with the third touchdown late there to Leonard Fournette in garbage time. So Brady gets the touchdowns, a couple to Mike Evans. So Evans returns. Brady gets revved up. Donovan Smith is back. You have Chris Godwin back. And all of a sudden, have Julio Jones back with Russell Gage. And all of a sudden, the numbers go up in a favorable matchup there against the Chiefs. So Tom Brady, are you for real? It's hard to say that with the GOAT, but yeah, he's for real. The matchups are going to open up nicely for the GOAT. It's the Falcons coming up next. So remember, a lot of that good division stuff is still waiting here for Tom Brady. That schedule is going to get a lot easier. He's faced some tough matchups early. The Cowboys, the Saints. This is the first week where he had a favorable matchup and the right guys were there. The Packers were tough even last week. So marquee games against good defenses are gone. Brady is locked in now as a QB1. And same thing with Aaron Rodgers. It played out that way. Just get the weapons going. The weapons are all settled. The offensive line gets better. Boom. You put up numbers. You're too good as the GOAT and the MVP. All right. Damien Harris, are you for real? Yes. Great running game that the Packers faced there by the Patriots. They gashed them. The Packers actually are pretty weak against the run, very strong against the pass. So they followed that script to a T here with Matt Patricia. Guess who they get next week? It's the Lions. Damien Harris. Too bad Ramondre Stevenson didn't score because he looked great running as well. So Harris and Stevenson are the bread and butter. Your wide receivers are a mess. Devontae Parker's the only viable guy. You have now Geno Smith injured there at tight end. So you don't have a lot there. So Damien Harris, Ramondre Stevenson are this offense right now, especially with Bailey Zappi or Brian Hoyer in there, or even a gimpy Mac Jones. So this is the offense here for the Patriots. So you got to love Harris and Stevenson to continue to smash this week. Are you for real, Geno Smith? Yes. He is now a QB1 firmly in the top 10 this season. What a massive game against an atrocious Detroit defense. The only bad game he's had was against San Francisco. But he saw week 1 against Denver, tough defense, he came through. Week 3 against Atlanta, 325 yards, two scores there. Geno comes up with 2 through the air, 1 on the ground. Geno was feeling it here. That's how bad the Lions defense. So really the moral of the story, start reasonable quarterbacks against the Lions defense. I don't know if I would start Zappi or Hoyer or Jones against that defense. There, I think New England can run all over them. That's what they're going to do. But we know the Seahawks can throw the ball with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. An underrated story is the Seahawks rookie tackles playing really well in pass protection and run blocking. So Geno Smith goes off. Rashad Penny goes off. This offense looks pretty darn good. So you shake your head. Was this a Russell Wilson issue last year? I mean, Geno's just playing within the offense. Hey, he's got Metcalf and Lockett and Will Dissly and Rashad Penny working. This is a pretty underrated offensive skill offense now that we kind of faded too much here with Geno. But Geno, we know his history. We didn't believe a lot in it. But the surprise thing is his connection with Metcalf. We were worried about that downfield, lesser arm there of him versus Drew Lock, but that has not been a concern. So Geno bringing it, and he's playing within the system quarterbacks with support can put up numbers. We've seen that with Geno Smith. We saw that his opposite number, Jared Goff. It doesn't matter who's out there. He's well protected. You can throw it at Amon-Ra St. Brown and DJ Chark, or we can see him pivot to TJ Hawkinson and Josh Reynolds for big games. So that kind of was another Spider-Man meme game in the positive way, not like the Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota bridge quarterback way, but Smith and Goff, good performances there. Smith did it with his legs and with his arm a little bit. Goff did it all with his arm. But are you for real? Both these guys are for real. I mean, Jared Goff is a top 5 fantasy QB right now because their defense stinks. They've got great weapons, great offensive line. So it's a perfect storm for Jared Goff to produce. We just can't trust Goff from week to week. And Geno Smith, they could have a clunker at any point. So keep that in mind before you get too excited and say they're regular play. you got to really examine the matchups and go after them as well still with Geno Smith and Jared Goff. But absolutely, they're for real in terms of what they can do with the potential around them. We also looked at Zach Wilson. What a day for Zach Wilson. He does have an interception, but he had the good touchdown pass he threw. He also caught a touchdown pass from his buddy Baxton Berrios. Brees Hall looked good with Zach Wilson in there. And the spur around, Elijah Moore got a little bit involved. So Wilson looking a lot better than he was as a rookie. They talked about that quite a bit. This offense settling a little bit more. It helps when you have legitimate weapons here. So you add not only Garrett Wilson, but you have Tyler Conklin. He was involved pretty well. Brees Hall out of the backfield. So are you for real, Zach Wilson? Look, it wasn't spectacular, but it was definitely viable in fantasy where we can't totally ignore him. They get the Dolphins this week. That'll be an interesting test against a blitzing defense, but Wilson looked good, I think, and that drive was a little bit of coming age there to lead them down the field and score that winner against the Steelers. So really excited about Zach Wilson. Also interested more in Kenny Pickett here as he gets the keys to those Steelers receivers here. Josh Reynolds, are you for real? I think he's here to stay as a key target. I think he's definitely ahead of DJ Chark. But still, when you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown and TJ Hawkinson, and whenever DeAndre Swift is healthy, Reynolds is going to be a fourth option to pass game. In this particular game, he was kind of the code number one there with Hawkinson. But definitely Goff and Reynolds have good chemistry. So are you for real? For at this moment, we'll see what happens with St. Brown and Chark and the ankles. But Reynolds definitely locked in a key offense with a lot of volume here. That's what we're looking for. George Pickens, couldn't be happier for Pickens because now he gets Kenny Pickett, hopefully. 100-yard game. Definitely that chemistry that we saw between Pickett and Pickens. Say that 5 times fast, manifested a little bit here in the action here. You also have developing a situation where Pickens is going to see more targets and snaps here, I think, going forward. So Pickett to Pickens is going to be a thing, folks, as rookies. And I'm glad to see Pickens again. The Steelers are giving opportunities, but there's definitely a chemistry between those two that did not exist between Pickens and Trubisky. Remember, Pickens' biggest highlight with Trubisky was making that circus catch against the Browns in one hand. So keep that in mind here. That Pickens is an immense talent, and now he's got a quarterback there. A fellow rookie has good chemistry with him that can get him the ball downfield a little bit better than Trubisky. Darnell Mooney, we needed a shot play to get it done here against the Giants, but he woke up. 100-yard game for Darnell Mooney here on the road in New York. So maybe this has unlocked Mooney a little bit more there. They finally got him involved. It was finally a situation where the Bears threw the ball a little bit, maybe forced into that because they couldn't lean on David Montgomery as much here. So threw a little bit more. Mooney was the beneficiary of that. He's a good player. We saw that. The talent is definitely there. He just needs to get the ball in his hands. I think the Bears will do more to do that. But again, I would say he is for real as back as a wide receiver 3, but let's examine. Hopefully Justin Fields will continue to throw a little bit better here downfield, and that will help Mooney's value as well. Nico Collins led the Texans in receiving. I know everyone was on Brandon Cooks a little bit to have a rebound game, and he did with nearly 60 yards receiving and a touchdown. But Nico Collins looked like Nico Collins. Part of it is the Davis Mills played a little bit better. I was fading these guys a little bit, Collins and the rest, because Davis Mills just looked terrible. And we see Dameon Pierce, he's been the bread and butter of what the Texans want to do offensively. So Nico Collins flashed a little bit to say maybe go get him a little bit more involved here as a young receiver going forward there. But still, are you for real? Nico Collins not going to buy it because, again, Jalen Mills could actually – or Davis Mills could go right back in the tank this week against the Jaguars defense. All right, Falcons, Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier. Now, Huntley had a big game, but Algier looks special. Like I was a little bit not sure how they were going to involve in the pass game. We'll see if Cordell Patterson continues to fade here with the injury and getting a little bit wear and tear, or is it a 3-headed monster we can't trust? So Caleb Huntley, I would not bang the table to go after him too hard. I think Algier is still the guy they prefer. I mean, keep in mind, they used a pretty high draft pick on Algier. They liked him in training camp. There's all these reports that he could be the guy here. If Patterson goes down, as we saw, or limited, it's going to be a mix of Huntley and Algier, but they both have some value there. So let's watch Patterson in the injury this week, see what happens. It is a tough matchup, however, this week against the Buccaneers. Jamal Agnew, are you for real? Well, part of this was the fact that you had no Zay Jones there against the Eagles. So Jamal Agnew scores a couple touchdowns here. So Agnew pretty much is their pivot, not Marvin Jones Jr. should more time be missed by Zay Jones. Agnew, it's been an underrated guy. He had some value last year as well, but obviously two coaching staffs love Agnew. So he's a special player. He's kind of a versatile hybrid of a running back and wide receiver. Again, no, he's not totally the worst play against the Texans. Should Jones, Zay, that is, miss the game, and we'll see how it plays out. But he's kind of a hybrid tight end. He kind of cuts into Evan Ingram a little bit as well. So Agnew's a guy they like. We 2 touchdowns. We totally can't ignore him. But am I going to play him right away? No, but I think he could be stashed in leagues if there was a real injury to Zay Jones. Now, Mo Cox, is he for real? Well, no, because Jelani Woods had the same game last week with 2 touchdowns, the rookie from Virginia. Now we got Ali Cox, good basketball player. I liked him as a sleeper because we thought Matt Ryan liked the tight end. He did like the tight end, but he's liked 3 different guys this year. So Ali Cox could easily go to have 1 catch or 0 catches next week. It was a short week against the Broncos. So are you for real, Mo Ali Cox? No. And finally, at tight end, Robert Tonyan. Are you for real, Robert Tonyan? He got back in the end zone. Welcome back to the end zone. Tonyan, I think he's for real. Here's why. This Packers passing game, remember we were panicking? What are they going to do without Davante Adams, Marcus Valdez-Scantling? I think they have the answers, folks. Al Mazard, Romeo Doubs, and Robert Tonyan. These are the 3 guys. That makes sense. Randall Cobb can make a few catches. He still looks pretty healthy and spry, by the way, as a slot receiver. But Lazard and Dobbs are in the circle there with Aaron Rodgers. Tonyan has been there before. We know he's a double-digit touchdown guy, so he's going to get more looks in the end zone. Tonyan looks fully healthy now. So, Tonyan, are you for real? This position is terrible. Tonyan is for real. We know that he has a history of producing big time, and this is a touchdown-dependent position. So, Robert Tonyan, for real. Yeah, we're going to look at this week. All right, there you have it. There's a look at the key reactions from week 4 from the NFL for fantasy football and taking it into week 5. Don't forget, tomorrow we will have our look at the waiver wire. So thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Tomorrow we pick up Tuesday. We'll make the recommendations across positions, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and streaming defenses you can look at. And keep in mind, we'll definitely break down how we want to attack running back with the Williams and Taylor injury. So check that out here on Locked On Fantasy Football as we turn the page from week 4 to week 5. We have one more game tonight. Rams 49ers. We'll break that game down in short detail for you tomorrow. Now make your second listen to Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis you need in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available just like this show wherever you get your podcast. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. Good luck if you need something in the Rams 49ers game to help you win your fantasy football matchups. And we'll catch you tomorrow for the week 5 waiver wire.